Imagine
A podcast.
where time drifts slowly,
A podcast.
where
Isaac.
carries you away.
So let me be clear. We tortured some folks.
If you don't like what we tell you to believe in, we'll kill you.
Hey, hi, hello, it's Isaac. You're listening to Coexist Inc. Y'all believe in aliens, right? I mean, most people seem to. Whenever I ask someone if they believe there are aliens, they almost always say yes. Of course there's other life in the universe, but it usually doesn't go too much farther than that. It takes a special kind of person to really dive into the world of ufology. And I can't say I'm one of them, even though I have a personal alien experience, which I've told the story on previous episodes, so I won't get into it now. But there's still something about the current UFO community that I still relate to, which is the perpetual promise of an answer that you never get. On today's episode, I'm joined by ufologist and just like all around great researcher, Robert Skvarla. Robert and I painfully went through the entirety of The Age of Disclosure, which is a documentary about the disclosure of alien tech. It's not great. We watched it so you don't have to, and I can't recommend enough that you don't. I mean, I'm someone who loves bad, cheesy, corny stuff. This is just so boring and not entertaining in the least, and really doesn't add anything new to the conversation around UFOs, UAPs, and disclosure. It does make me think of the Millerites, though, you know, that Christian sect that listened to William Miller, who said that there's according to this math, the second advent will occur, and Jesus is going to come down and take you all the way to heaven. And these people listened to Miller, stood up on their roofs, and waited for Jesus to come down, and he never did. And you see this with Bitcoin as well, right? And AI, this perpetual promise, these constant promises of some kind of event, some kind of moment, some kind of millenarian, apocalyptic revelation. We're all waiting for the revelation, for something to be revealed, and it never is. And so in this regard, we're all like Charlie in the football, you know, where he goes to kick it and Lucy pulls it up and he keeps falling for it again and again and again. And you have to wonder, Charlie's not stupid. He knows it's going to happen. Maybe Charlie likes it. Maybe it's the pleasure of wanting and not having. Is that jouissance? Can my Lacanian psychoanalysis listeners tell me if that's what jouissance is? Because I never know what it is, and I always ask my friend Nina if that's what that is. And she's getting annoyed when I just ask if anything. Anyway, I think that with the aliens, with the conspiracies, it's the promise. It's the wanting the disclosure, it's the wanting the truth and not having it that is the pleasurable part. That's what you enjoy. You're not enjoying like the actual knowing, because once you have it, then what? Then what? No, instead it's the wanting that is the part that's the end in of itself, I guess. It's just to want. So these disclosure events, these disclosure promises will only just be that. It will be perpetual blue balls. You'll be edging forever and ever because they're never going to tell you. There's never a revelation. AI will never become sentient. Jesus ain't coming down anytime soon. But in the meantime, you can just get that sweet, sweet want. Enjoy the show. And if you feel so inclined, please consider subscribing on Patreon and doing all the stuff that got to do the self-promo. You know, I got to do it. But it's a great show, and thanks again to Robert for jumping on to talk to me about something I know very little about, and he knows quite a bit.
I've been having fun looking at where Twitter Blue accounts come from.
Oh, yeah, same. I found a bunch of QAnon accounts that are based out of Nigeria, or at least some of them were using VPNs, so they might have been using Nigeria for some reason, but a bunch of them also, they were using it through the Nigerian app store. So definitely Nigeria.
But why would you use a VPN through Nigeria? Wouldn't that slow things down? Why don't you just use like a different city in America? That's what I don't understand.
I'm not sure. I mean, maybe they just wanted their specific location protected, because I don't think anyone was expecting this to pop up, right? They just didn't force this like out of the blue one day, took it away a few hours later, and then reinstituted a different version of it after that.
Yeah, that's what was not having Twitter Blue stays vindicated. I have not paid for Twitter, nor do I ever want to. But it seems like it really backfired on all those people who were trying to make a buck off of Elon's little Twitter paid program.
I mean, that probably encouraged all of that too, right? I mean, not that there weren't a bunch of fake accounts promoting Trump, QAnon, weird right-wing angles, but like I'm sure that helped speed up the process and gain new accounts doing that.
The big one that everyone freaked out about, of course, was that the DHS Gov Homeland Security account was based in Tel Aviv.
I'm assuming that was probably just someone they had doing social media for them.
So what should it mean then? Should we care? Does it matter? Is it just kind of like a fun little gimmick? I'm not surprised.
I mean, I don't know what it means specifically. I'm sure there is a coordination of communication strategies between our government and the Israeli government. The DHS account, it's a government account. We know it's still associated with the U.S. So they just hired someone who was like fluent in Twitter speak to post shitty right-wing memes from a few years ago. Weird homoerotic pictures of guys flexing and standing on the necks of, less powerful men so they can fulfill those fantasies that they all are working through vicariously by posting, and weird other stuff that's going on in the right-wing subconscious.
It's crazy that we need to outsource our racist fascism to other countries. We should have plenty of it here. I don't understand.
I mean, if you're going to do it to a country, if you need to outsource to anyone in that case, I'm pretty sure Israel's probably the best place to do it.
Yeah, they'd probably have like their own college precisely for that.
I mean, yeah, they've been running influence operations in the U.S. for like decades. I mean, Mike Pompeo, who just met with Jonathan Pollard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's like you've got all of this weird stuff going on where we have decades of, Israeli influence operations and spying, and it's all culminating in this one historical moment right now for some reason.
It's pretty brazen for Pompeo to meet with Pollard right now, too, you'd think. I mean, with all the Fuentes factionalization of the right wing, what are they thinking? Like, do they have to?
Just meeting with a former convicted spy who stole state secrets is a little odd under any circumstance, regardless of what country it is. I don't think typically you want anyone operating on behalf of the United States government meeting with someone who we had imprisoned for spying. Mm-hmm. Generally a bad policy.
But especially now, it just feels like it's why bother doing that at all? Like, who are they signaling to? I wonder.
Israel, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where it's like, you guys will keep getting away with whatever it is you've been doing.
Israel's got to be like the worst kind of girlfriend in the world, the one that needs just this constant assurance. Just like tell me you love me every 5 seconds. Do you still love me? Do you still love me? It's just like,
yeah,
don't they know already?
Certainly seems to be the reaction.
It's so crazy.
I mean, I'm sure they need constant assurances because of the way public opinion has been turning against Israel over the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm. No, well,
the Fuentes stuff, like you mentioned, is probably a big one right now.
Yeah, I'm doing a story about the new RNC chair, Joe Gruters. He's from here in Sarasota.
Mm-hmm.
And it was 2 months ago. So I met with him. I was actually on the phone with him when he found out Charlie Kirk was dead. And it was so incredibly awkward. He was on the phone. He was like, "Oh, my aide just told me Charlie Kirk is dead." I was like, "Oh, wow.
Do you need to go, man? Do you need a moment?"
No, I was like, well, back to business. We need to set up our meeting.
I'm surprised he didn't just end it there and get off the phone.
I know he could have got off the phone pretty easy with me, but we would meet like a few days later, and I would bring up, like what he's facing as the RNC chair with the future of the Republican Party. And I was like, yeah, you got to watch. Like Fuentes is going to be, and Israel is going to be your tough battle right now. And he was like, he pretended not to really know who Fuentes was.
It's funny because I remember talking or arguing with someone online like a year ago about deplatforming and how I didn't really think it was working. And one of the examples I brought up was Nick Fuentes, and the person was like, Nick Fuentes? Who's Nick Fuentes? He doesn't have any power within the Republican Party. And I was like, man, he was working with Ye just like a moment ago on a possible presidential campaign. He met with President Trump. What are you talking about? And then now we're at a moment where he's probably the most influential person in the Republican Party, not named Donald Trump.
And they want to pretend like he's not. They want to say, I even talked to our greatest congressman, Randy Fine, about this as well. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd call him our greatest. I know you're being sarcastic.
Yes.
But
Yeah. Well, he and Joe Gruters were roommates in Tallahassee, and now they're roommates in D.C. You know it smelled crazy in there. And when I brought up Fuentes, he dismissed it. He was just like, he's not even a Republican. He's not even a Republican. That was his response.
They want to say that, but that's not how much of the young Republican Party feels.
They're in absolute denial, and it's so wild how much can change in 2 months, like just after the Charlie Kirk shooting, to Epstein emails, and how fucked he looks in the midterms. So I told him, I was like, dude, I'm worried about you now. I think it's gonna be tougher than we initially thought for you.
They got some issues coming up for sure.
Some biggies.
Just send out some more stimmy checks.
Yeah, $2,000. Who would I vote for $2,000? I don't know.
I mean, I probably wouldn't vote for anybody, but I'll still take the check.
Yeah,
if you want to send it, dude, send it.
Cash that check. But today we're here to talk about the one of the greatest documentaries I've ever seen. If you want to even call it a documentary, I don't know. But just released on the 21st, The Age of Disclosure.
This is the biggest discovery in human history.
You had information being locked away that could change the trajectory for species.
It has so many beneficial impacts, including clean energy.
We should have disclosure today. We should have disclosure tomorrow. The time has come.
Age of bullshit is more like it.
I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but it fucking sucked. It was so painfully boring. And
it was boring, yeah.
Robert, thank you so much for doing your homework. And I mean, I don't know if you got anything out of it, but
I mean, I was going to watch it eventually. I was just going to wait so I didn't have to pay for it. So you helped me out on that front.
Yes, thank you to the many people who sent me pirate links. I'm sure you'll be getting a knock on the door from some suited spook pretty soon. But it wasn't worth it. If I go to prison for stealing this movie, I'm gonna be so mad because it's so.
There's a
bad.
great UFO writer skeptic, Jason Colavito, who put up his review. I think it was like shortly after the movie dropped, and he posted, I believe, yesterday, and he compared it to basically a feature-length episode of Ancient Aliens, and he was 100% correct.
I actually had to watch Ancient Aliens afterwards to get this taste out of my mouth because there's something warm and fun about Ancient Aliens.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So anytime I go visit my parents for holidays, because I live in a big city and they're in a rural area, one of the things we end up doing, me and my dad, is just sitting down and watching a couple of episodes of Ancient Aliens, because after he retired, he just turned into a UFO guy like a bunch of old Fox News boomers have.
Because it's fun. It's fun.
Yeah.
And watching The Age of Disclosure is kind of like Ancient Aliens is your favorite like local band that is producing their own music. The Age of Disclosure is like, when your favorite band gets a record contract and then overproduces the shit out of their music, and all the warmth and gritty like soulfulness of it is gone.
Yeah. No,
So
absolutely agree.
the budget on this thing was pretty good. I mean, they got multi-camera shots. I have no idea how much the budget was exactly, but it was hot. I mean, they're using really nice equipment. They got like a crew. They got, anytime in Ancient Aliens on that, the Giorgio guy, they have one shot, right? It's a one shot. Like the guy with the crazy hair. That's his name, right? Giorgios
Lucas or something like that. Yeah, you're right.
They've got one shot on him only but where with this Age of Disclosure, they like multi-camera angles of this guy, which is like that requires many people to be there, to travel. Highly produced. I wonder who actually produced it. The director, Dan Farah, who I'd never really heard of before, but was a producer on Ready Player One with Steven Spielberg. Did you know that?
I mean, that's not shocking. Steven Spielberg's producing, or he's almost done directing a new UFO movie that's supposed to come out, I think, towards the end of the year. It's going to be in the vein of his prior films on UFOs, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and the Taken series that he produced.
It's yes. I want to get into like how these guys are a bunch of just like nerds who wish their lives were movies, especially Luis Elizondo, who is really like the protagonist of this entire film. And I need your expertise on these kind of characters. But before we get into that, I do want to give the listener an overview of the Age of Disclosure, what it is, why it's important, I guess, in the disclosure community, or if it is at all, and where to place it in the like UAP alien conversation.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is a recent development out of a series of documentaries that have been coming out. Farah was a producer on a prior one, The Phenomenon, which I believe was directed by James Fox, who's put out a couple of them. But like the whole concept of what we're dealing with here is the UFO disclosure movement, which really kicked off for the most part in the 70s. There were versions of it dating back earlier to the 40s and 50s. People like Donald Kehoe and NICAP, who represented the respectable public face of ufology, as opposed to like the woo-woo crowd of contactees from that era. People like George Adamski, George Van Tassel, Truman Bethurum, and others who, you know, would talk about like Space Brothers and various weird conceptions of UFOs and aliens that had a spiritual tint. The disclosure movement grew more out of the Kehoe side of things because he was ultimately one of the first people to really take up the UFO subject from like a respectable angle. He was a former Marine naval aviator. He was in the military, and he had recruited people from the military, from government, from various respectable organizations and institutions to act as the public face of UFOs. And in 1955, he published a book, The Flying Saucer Conspiracy, which is really where you begin to get the beginning of disclosure, because he alleges the existence of something known as the Silence Group, which is a group within the government that's essentially engaging in a conspiracy to prevent the public from knowing about UFOs. Kehoe was somewhat of a popular public figure. His books were some of the best-selling books of the era, even when compared against people like Ray Barker and Fortean writers who eventually glommed on to the UFO subject. But in the 70s, you really start to see the formalization of the UFO movement through people like Stanton Friedman, J. Allen Hynek, again, people who come from a serious, respectable background, scientists who take up the UFO cause. And then into the 80s and 90s, people like Friedman continue pushing for disclosure, taking on subjects like MJ-12, again, a continuation sort of the Kehoe conspiracy, although kind of a different formulation of it, because it then takes up the subject of Roswell, which was an event that was reported on when it happened in 1947, but didn't really become a subject of public prominence until 1980, thanks to a book, The Roswell Conspiracy. People like Friedman built off of that to create the subject of MJ-12, this conspiracy where the government, beginning with the Truman administration, had engaged in widespread manipulation of the media and just public opinion to cover up the UFO subject. Over time, that has evolved. So elements of, you know, the Kehoe theory, MJ-12, all of these other things continue to appear, and the story changes ever so slightly so that the more fantastical elements maybe get dropped or downplayed, because one of the things that you see in the Age of Disclosure is versions of this story appear. So they mention Roswell. They mention the Holloman Air Force Base meeting in 1964, I believe, where UFOs touched down and there was some kind of agreement between government officials and aliens whatever happened there. That stuff that had featured, like these are stories that had featured in various forms of UFO media dating back to the 70s. The Holloman story came from a guy, Robert Emenegger, who had made a documentary. It initially was UFOs Past, Present, Future, and then it became UFOs It Has Begun. It actually won an Academy Award, if I remember right, for Best Documentary in the year it was released. Inexplicably, I don't know how, because it seemed to have no presence. But the Emenegger story has appeared in various capacities. It's featured in the MJ-12 mythology and other aspects of UFO beliefs. So, like, what we encountered with this documentary is just an evolution of a continuing disclosure mythology.
Is the disclosure mythology, or is the disclosure pattern just constant blue balls? Because I felt like I'm watching this documentary. It's an hour and 9 minutes long and felt considerably longer than that. And I just kept waiting. I'm like, what is? I don't even understand what the thesis is here exactly, other than, aliens exist. Trust us that there's all this stuff go. It was just so scattershot, the whole thing. There was no sort of arc to it. There was no distinct narrative. They tried to do it chronologically, but I got so bored so fast from everything that they were throwing at me. And you'd think that this would be such salacious, scandalous, crazy information, but my eyes were just glazed over the whole time.
Yeah, so one of the things that, you mentioned blue balls. One of the things that happens historically is that the UFO subject comes up, draws a lot of attention, and then slowly starts to disappear from the public eye. As that happens, you start to see more and more fantastical claims, pushes for disclosure, and nothing ever comes of it. So, for example, the first wave of UFO sightings in 1947 did not begin with Roswell. It began with a guy named Kenneth Arnold, Mount Rainier, Washington. Over the next 2 to 2.5 weeks, you see for the first true flap. A flap is like a series of sightings of UFOs in a short amount of time. That culminated in Roswell, which was considered a minor event at the time. No one really thought much of it, but nothing happened there. And UFOs continued to gain attention in the public eye for the next couple of years, culminating in a series of sightings throughout 1952, with the big one being over Washington, D.C. that summer. That led to the creation of something known as the Robertson Panel, which was the CIA's first attempt at understanding the UFO phenomenon, if you believe that the CIA only wanted to understand it and maybe did not have a hand in it. One of the things that's interesting about that is Harris Chadwell, who I think we may have discussed last time I was on your podcast. He sent a memo to the director of the CIA at that time, stating that the UFO situation presented both a problem and an opportunity, because Americans are, in his words, mentally conditioned to the acceptance of the incredible. This idea that Americans have, are predisposed to magical forms of thinking. Chadwell was actually instrumental in setting up the Robertson Panel. He was involved in helping select the members. He interacted with many of them. I believe you can find correspondence between him and, it might be Thornton Page, who I believe was at MIT at that time, or working for the Operations Research Office, a government agency. I forget which of the two offhand. But he also acted as the CIA's liaison to the panel. Ultimately, the panel agreed in the sense that they felt that UFOs presented a situation that could cause public panic if not handled appropriately. So one of the things that they suggested, for example, was bringing in astronomers or getting companies like Walt Disney to help produce UFO content that presented a mystery or an anomaly and then presented an explanation so the public could understand it. This continued, this idea that the public couldn't handle the UFO subject was something that appeared a lot in the press. The press would often denigrate and mock it because they didn't want to set off panics. Ultimately, though, the public interest in UFOs continued up through the 60s, when we had our first hearing on UFOs in 1966, thanks to officials like Gerald Ford, who lobbied aggressively for it. This led to the creation of the Condon Committee, which was set to investigate UFOs. The Condon Committee eventually came out with a report that has been highly contentious in the UFO community because the lead official on it, the person the committee was named after, Edward Condon, came out with an opinion stating that the UFO subject did not warrant government attention, that we should not create a government office for UFOs, that the subject was not warranting government interest because there was not enough there to research. But what you see early on in the UFO field is this idea, at least on the government end of things, that UFOs are not a serious subject, that we're inflating essentially magical thinking. We're promoting the idea of something that doesn't exist, and we must not do that, in part to protect the public from itself. That has changed, and we can go into that later, but that's generally what we see in the beginning. And it's something that I would say persisted up through maybe the 90s or 2000s when you start to see a shift in how the media handled UFOs.
Who was this Condon guy? I mean, would you say he was onto something, or was he sowing more disinfo in this regard? I'm kind of confused.
Well, he was a physicist who had worked in and out of the government, I believe. He had been a director for, the National Bureau of Standards, and he was associated with like various professional societies, the American Association for the Advancement of Science. He was considered by the government at that time an impartial figure. People within the UFO field obviously feel differently because he was also a noted skeptic even before he got on the panel. So they think he got on there and he was partial to the skeptics side of things.
Okay. I want to talk more about let's talk about the characters in the Age of Disclosure. Obviously you have Dan Farah, who he doesn't insert himself in the movie, although he, in the promotion of the film, is deep. He's just did a 3-hour long Rogan episode. I
actually kind of enjoy Rogan more than I enjoyed this.
That's the thing, is
I can occasionally listen to Rogan episodes and not have my eyes glazed over.
No, I was listening to some clips of Farah talking, and I was like, this is so much more fun to listen to than watching that terrible documentary. Yeah. And Farah, he's saying crazier things, it feels like, than that were in the movie itself. But at the same time, I'm noticing this pattern of just these people who want life to be a movie. And when asked about some contact that people made and how they described, of course, Farah himself was not contacted by aliens. He's only like all this disclosure stuff. It's always like secondhand information. And he says that it was described to him that these aliens look like the aliens from Close Encounters, which is so funny because everything is just like a reference to a movie, to media, to something that you already imagined. And I find that to be, it happens so much. Even with Lua Elizondo, who's the other character I want to get into, I saw that he has on his left forearm, he has the Predator code for self-destruct tattooed on it.
Yeah.
Which is such movie nerd shit. Like, I'm sorry, like, how can you not psychoanalyze someone who does something like that and extrapolate on their motives?
Well, so one of the things I find interesting with you keep saying life is a movie, that's sort of something you see in the QAnon community too. It was something where a lot of the terminology they would use, they would argue that life is a movie, and essentially we're reaching the climax is sort of how they would present things. You see a kind of overlap with the UFO community in the sense that conspiracy communities often talk in language like this. Even though I'm a conspiracy person, I interact with enough of them that I can sort of recognize the language. What I find interesting about the UFO community, the one in this film in particular, you were talking about how they present the aliens. What's funny is up until the formalization of the UFO community through people like Kehoe and others, there was actually a wide range in how UFOs were portrayed, like specifically aliens and the alien life forms. The woo-woo end of things, people like George Adamski would talk of space brothers who were rooted in this theosophical belief promoted by people like Helena Blavatsky, root races, and one of the root races were Aryans. The space brothers that Adamski spoke about were essentially the Nordics, who were comparable to the Space Brothers. Yeah, the Space Brothers were the Nordics. And if you look at other versions of aliens from that era, they're very weird. Truman Bathorum, another UFO personality contactee, he spoke of, what did they say? He compared the aliens to having a Latin appearance. And the description he gave of one of the aliens that he met, I forget the name of the alien. It was a feminine name, but she essentially looked like a Hispanic woman. So you would have this wide range of humanoids versus something like the Flatwoods Monster, which I think the sighting happened in 1952. That would be on like the opposite end of the high strangeness scale, where it just looked something completely foreign. But what you see eventually by like the 70s, so Close Encounters of the Third Kind and other UFO media in that period, you begin seeing a formalization of the alien, either as little green men or the Greys. And that's sort of what dominates now. But you still have a weird mashup. So someone like Lou promoting like this merging of fiction with reality, or their version of reality, you see kind of that return of the woo-woo mixed in with the more respectable crowd, because a lot of what they're promoting now is stuff that would have been closer to the contactee movement. So like aliens as interdimensional beings, the extraterrestrial, the ultra-terrestrial theory. It's all of this stuff that's getting back to the contactee movement of the 40s and 50s. It's very bizarre.
And they were doing that scattershot thing where they would briefly mention, and one of the 34 government officials they interviewed for this documentary, someone would just be like, yeah, they could be interdimensional, and they would cut to something, and I was just like, are we going to follow this line of thought anywhere, or are you just going to throw up just a bunch of stuff at us?
And the reason I mentioned the Blavatsky connection with the Space Brothers is, again, in a lot of the people who were involved in the New Disclosure movement, there's this bizarre influence of theosophy, at least among the inner circle of people like Hal Puthoff, who appears in the documentary, who has been involved with To the Stars Academy, which was one of the groups that first appeared, I think, in 2015 or 2016 to help kick off this more recent disclosure cycle. But he even dates back to the 70s. He was involved with the Stargate project through Stanford Research, the Stanford Research Institute. So he's been involved in like various forms of paranormal or supernatural government research going back years. And he's one of the people who has been a big proponent of the ultra-terrestrial theory that even people like David Grush, the most notable of the recent whistleblowers, has mentioned repeatedly.
Do you know anything else about Dan Farah? I mean, I couldn't...
Not personally,
Yeah,
no.
I hadn't found too much about him. But the protagonist of the film is Luis Lou Elizondo. And
Big Lou.
Big Lou. He is big in this movie. He is wearing half the time the tightest, littlest black shirt. And he just looks...
That's an ex-military thing, man. Lots of those dudes love wearing like those Under Armour like muscle shirts.
He is just swollen in this shirt. And there, some of the they have the multi-angle shots of him. They're not so flattering, especially when they do the side profile of him, because his neck fat in the back is something to behold. And there's lots of...
He's beefy.
He's a beefy boy. And there's lots of shots of him walking and sitting and pondering. I mean, it really... The kind of it's not a hagiography, but it is so flattering to him, and treating him with such reverence and not questioning any of the things he's doing. He's got that one scene where he's at a chalkboard and he says like the 5 traits of a spacecraft, as though like you just, without really explaining it all, the terminology. It really is. So strange. And I do want to talk a bit more about Elizondo, who he is, what he's about, where he comes from. I learned just before we jumped on this interview that he and I went to the same high school. He graduated 16.
Makes you sus, man.
I know, right? Sarasota stays sus, man. He went to Riverview High School, graduated in 1990. Apparently, he moved to Sarasota from Texas with his like Bay of Pigs father. Apparently, his father
He claims his dad was a part of Alpha 66 who participated in the Bay of Pigs. Alpha 66 being an organization our own government has designated, or at least at one point designated, a terrorist organization.
And then he was a part
because of the thing for Alpha 66 is they were one of the CIA-backed Cuban groups that was committing assassinations on American soil during the 60s and the 70s.
No, when people say like leftists were like terrorists in the 20th century, I mean, you had like the Weather Underground, they paled in comparison to what the Cubans were doing in Miami.
Oh, absolutely.
They were
if not for being prolific, like the Cubans were actually fairly effective in what they were attempting to do.
They were killing the shit out of people, their own people too. If you showed the slightest bit of sympathy towards the island, they would just blow you the fuck up and get away with it completely. And that was before cocaine even really started hitting Miami. But yeah, he went to Riverview High School, graduated in 1990. His father worked at the Colony Beach Club, which would become significant later on because that is the hotel that George Bush stayed at the night before 9/11, where there was an alleged attempt on his life that morning that is significantly underreported, but you can see it in the Longboat Observer. Allegedly, a van full of Middle Eastern looking men arrived 6 a.m. and said, "We have an exclusive poolside interview with the president." And everyone was like, "No, you don't. Well, who are you?" And they fled. They ran away.
Great tactic, guys. We have an interview with the president. Yeah, sure. Go on in.
Worked. Hey, might have, but
I mean, maybe in like the 50s or 60s, but I don't think by 9/11.
But people theorized that this was one of those camera bomb assassination attempts that had happened just in Iraq, I think weeks prior to 9/11. So that connection is always funny. Sarasota, just so many funny sus connections. Elizondo, of course, of Cuban descent, which is an immediate susness, honestly. He would go on to, I think, torture at Guantanamo Bay. Is that correct?
He claims, yeah. So I don't know if it's ever been corroborated, but he claims he was involved in torture at Guantanamo Bay during the 2000s, which is like, if you're going to promote something about yourself randomly, why do you pick that? It's not something that even only a small group of people on the right, like the really fanatical far right, support it. Even like moderate Republicans are like, yeah, that was not a good thing.
Yeah, I don't really understand this guy's thoughts in general, but he was apparently a major nerd in high school, and if the picture you can see on the Sarasota Herald Tribune of his senior photo, you would say yes, he's a massive nerd. Elizondo describes his Sarasota childhood in self-deprecating terms as socially awkward, not popular at all, not good with the ladies, and the last kid ever picked on a team. He says, "I knew at a young age I would have to take care of myself. I did not want to get beat up anymore." I think that begins to immediately, how can you not psychoanalyze him and immediately be like, of course you become what you have become now today.
Yeah, a lot of nerds, unfortunately, the lesson I think we all took from Revenge of the Nerds is that they just want to be popular, but really the message we should have taken was they're vindictive little shitheads who want to exact revenge and hold the same kind of power that was lorded over them. If anything, they are worse than the jocks in the movie.
Well, they're rapists in the movie. So
yeah, well, one of them is for sure.
Yeah. No, they're...
But like that, that's the thing. Like you had this perception of nerds in the 80s and 90s that they were like these passive, kind of kind-hearted people, when that was not actually the case. They were all just seething little, boils on the ass of society.
Yeah, we need to make rom-coms that depict nerds appropriately and
shove more of them in lockers.
Yes, yeah. Everyone says bring bullying back, and they might be right. So Elizondo, a big nerd in ROTC, he was a ROTC guy. All the ROTC kids that I remember at Riverview, like all had school shooter physiognomy.
I mean, to be fair, like a lot of people who join the military, I was in the military. So it's like a lot of them, when they join, they don't exactly, there's a small contingent that are physically prepared for the military. The rest of them are generally like nerdy looking weirdos.
Yeah.
I probably fell within that group.
Well, you don't look like a school shooter. So
not anymore, thankfully.
what else do we know? Who is Elizondo, and how does he fit into the UFO community?
Well, so he started off in Army counterintelligence before going to work for the Undersecretary of the Defense for Intelligence, at which point he was allegedly tapped to lead the government secret UFO program, ATIP, and somehow became involved in the UFO mythology because he was in charge of this, and then decided one day he could no longer keep a secret. So he quit his job, even though he still sticks to his NDA. He can't give away all of the details because he feels for some reason he can't reveal all the secrets lest he end up in prison or assassinated, basically what this movie implies.
Yeah, he was very proud of that moment where he's like, I had higher ups. I love how they always refer to like higher ups, senior officials, corroborated that they were going to kill him, that they were plotting. Congresspersons were plotting an assassination attempt on his life.
They bring up the threat of assassination frequently in this movie, and it's like, man, if they were going to do it, why would they wait until now? Why would they have not done it before you revealed anything? Why would they have not killed you when you quit? I don't understand. Like, assassinations and stuff like that do happen, but generally speaking, it has to be at a point where you're no longer where assassinating you removes the threat. If they kill you, it validates everything you're saying.
Right.
So why would they kill you now?
Have there been high-level assassinations of ufologists that you know of?
I can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, there's lots of people who have claimed that people in the UFO community were assassinated. I think Phil Schneider, who was a big underground basis guy, he talked about, weird government treaties. I think he called it like the Treaty of Greada or something. He was found dead of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to his head in his car at some point, I think in the early to mid-90s. And then it was later suggested, or immediately suggested, depending on, what the timeline is, that the government took him out. So, like, there are theories that ufologists have been assassinated, but no one's ever really presented any clear evidence that it's happened. A lot of it's like people like that who essentially end up getting so involved in the UFO mythology that they destroy their relationships to other people and they become very isolated and lonely people and probably end up offing themselves. It's not a situation like, I mean, I'm trying to think of like a journalist or something who was
Michael
assassinated.
Hastings or something like that.
Yeah, someone who may have presented a threat if you believe he was assassinated.
Mm-hmm. I sent you that video I found of this big bodyguard on the No Jumper podcast talking about meeting Lou Elizondo. And Elizondo is trying to recruit him to be his bodyguard. And he starts showing him photos of like a 2-mile long truck, but then also images like that was on the moon. And then images of like, what he called sea people.
You know who Luis Elizondo is?
No.
Oh.
Who's that?
I meet up with the guy. He shows me a ID from the Pentagon.
Oh.
He tells me that he does not trust certain people that he works with and that he needs me to keep him safe until he can testify in front of Congress. He shows me some pictures. He say, "What does this look like to you?" I'm like, "Man, it looks like a desert of some sort. I see like some trucks. You feel me?" He says, "Okay, so this is like a truck to you? Some type of plow truck, something like that?" He says, "Well, according to these measurements, this truck is 2 miles long." So I say, "Okay, so what am I looking at?" He says, "These pictures are on the surface of the moon." He say, "My job is to scrub these pictures to make them available to get released to the public." So I'm like, okay. Then the guy goes on to explain to me about some race of people who live at the bottom of the ocean. They have facilities there, and
this story is so funny and so perfect because it just shows how unserious this guy is. I mean, if you like, why are you just showing some random guy? Why are you showing off? That's what it really feels like. It's like, look how cool I am.
It's also one of those things where I think maybe Lou isn't all there because he's promoted the interdimensional theory. He's promoted various weird kind of woo-woo new age beliefs. He's definitely part of the inner circle of people who are attached to like the bizarre theosophical ideas that were first present in the early contactee movement and have recurred through the put off Gary Nolan crowd today. So I think it's possible Lou may not be all there.
He doesn't. Yeah, he's not the most convincing guy in the world. Do we know anything else that's kind of sus about Lou? I still want to get, like, what else do we know about him?
I mean, just the personal associations, the crowd he hangs out with, Gary Nolan, Hal Puthoff, all of these people who have latched on to Lou. None of them are people I would consider to be trustworthy in any meaningful sense. So just by mere association.
The other characters in the film too are all these ex or retired CIA officials, Congress people, current Congress people like Kristen Gillibrand. Yeah, who I do not trust at all.
No, Marco Rubio is also there, who obviously no one should trust.
Marco fucking Rubio.
Little
Marco, who's currently just like sending ICBMs at fucking fishermen in the Caribbean and Pacific. And this is the guy you try. What I loved about him too was he talked about early in the movie, he says, we need to get a handle on this alien tech, because if we don't understand our enemies, something like bad might happen, like 9/11, which is just like
UFO 9/11.
Which is, I love the idea, like, oh yeah, because we didn't know 9/11 was going to happen. It's like, who are you talking to?
It could be a UFO 9/11.
It could be a UFO 9/11. Yes.
I mean, there are theories that like UFOs shot the Twin Towers, so it's like that's something that exists on the really fringe end of things.
Yeah.
I guess we could have another version of that. But I mean, the thing that's funny about like Rubio, Gillibrand, all of the others is the entire thesis of this movie is that there's a group of people within the government which they identify as a legacy program made up of the CIA, the United States Air Force, Department of Energy, and defense contractors who, mimicking, Donald Kehoe's Silence Group, mimicking MJ-12, it's this secretive cabal of people in the government, high-level officials who are holding things away from you. But like the people who are telling you this are Air Force pilots, ex-CIA, ex-counterintelligence. It's like, why the fuck would I believe any single one of you? You're all part of the same institutions you're claiming are covering things up. It's this QAnon idea of white hats versus black hats.
Mm-hmm. So who can we trust then? And if that's the case, nobody.
Nobody. I mean, the thing is, like, a lot of these people have been perpetrating various versions of this story for years. In the 2000s, there was Project Serpo, which again was like this weird mythology of bizarre UFO interactions between the government and aliens who they made some kind of agreement. But like people who were researching it, I forget the name of the guy, but his UFO blog is badufos.blogspot.com. He was going through old emails which had been released to the public from the 2000s, and he found that Hal Puthoff and another person who was involved in the current disclosure cycle, Kit Green, had been involved with essentially the group that was spreading the Serpo hoax, which involved Rick Doty, who was initially one of the big subjects of UFO controversy in the 80s and 90s because of his involvement with essentially psyoping Paul Benowitz. And they were involved in this. So it's like, okay, you have these people who have definitely lied to you in the past. They're either ex-CIA, Kit Green is a CIA analyst or scientist. You have Hal Puthoff, who worked for the CIA. Why would we believe you? Even beyond that, like Kit Green has inserted himself into the Havana syndrome issue, where he's tried to state that the symptoms people who are suffering from Havana syndrome are experiencing are similar to symptoms people who have encountered UFOs experience. So one of the things that I find interesting there is, as part of the current Havana syndrome cycle, there was a contract awarded, I forget the year, it was like early 2020s, to Wayne State University to conduct research for Havana syndrome on ferrets to see like how they react. Guess who is a professor at Wayne State University? Kit Green. So it's like all of these people have been involved in sucking money out of the government in various capacities for spooky research since the 70s.
How do you give a ferret something that doesn't exist? I don't understand.
I forget the specifics of the actual contract. They were basically trying to see if they were essentially going to be shooting radiation at ferrets' brains to see if it impaired cognitive function, which, like, low levels of radiation don't necessarily do that, but after a certain point, yes, it's going to have some kind of negative effect.
Although this like just microwaving ferrets and being like,
Yeah,
this is
that
bad.
contract got canceled after Peter raised a stink. So
my
that
God.
one did not go forward. I don't know how much money Wayne State actually made. I don't know if Kit Green was involved, but he teaches at the same university. So it's like,
okay.
yeah, weird circumstances there where it's like they have their hands in all of these different pies.
When I think about UFO stuff, I'm always wondering like the cui bono of aliens just coming, and there's like the logic of alien tech, and they try to address some of the logical inconsistencies of aliens visiting us. That if they have such incredible tech, like why would they be crashing all the time?
Yeah.
And I love that there's one guy, another just like some random white guy, old white like a physicist, general. They all kind of blend into one for me. But he says, yes, people say, how could such great tech crash all the time? Well, think about it this way. We drive cars and we crash. And I was like, that's your your PhD and that's how you're going to present it? Like,
Someone was drunk driving a UFO.
Yeah, that would make more sense. But then they're like, yes, maybe they're gifts to us. And it's an IQ test to see like which nation is valid, or it's so ridiculous.
So something that keeps coming up. So I believe Gillibrand, I believe Rubio both mention it, but crash retrieval programs, they state every major nation has one, and that the Chinese and the Russians are ahead of us. This is something Grush had talked about when he first appeared on the scene, I believe in an interview with News Nation, who's been one of the primary sources of like leaks from this small group of people. Grush said something to the effect of like a UFO Cold War between us and China. So like there's this idea, and they haven't presented evidence of it, but most of the technology, or a lot of the technology that we have today, has descended from UFO tech that has either been gifted to us, which is something that is an idea that definitely dates back in the UFO community to at least the 90s, or it's stuff that we've reverse engineered from crash retrieval programs. Rubio, I think at one point even makes a argument about that with like defense contractors, talking about how the government will hire out work on a UFO program, and the person who's in charge of that program eventually leaves, and then someone else comes in. They might know a little bit about the program, then they leave, and then a third person comes in and they know nothing about the program. So the defense contractor is basically able to monetize the research and present it as their own without having to give back to the government. So this is something that keeps coming up, at least in this documentary, the idea of crash retrieval programs essentially creating most of our modern technology.
They even did the whole Eisenhower, beware the military-industrial complex trope.
Yeah, even as it's all military-industrial complex assholes telling us that. It's all NatSec blog people.
The other thing that I read about this documentary, that he gave a private screening to a bipartisan group of Congress people, which is also just like, is our Congress the most gullible bunch of fucking morons on the earth? Like
certainly today, yes,
they're so dumb. And to have Anna Paulina Luna up there too, she was in the movie.
She was.
It
yes.
doesn't make people look so good, and it seems like, what is the purpose of this film? I still don't understand.
There are a couple things here. I mentioned Jason Colavito earlier. He raises a good point in his review where they keep talking about free energy. The idea that for a UFO to exist, it has to have some kind of energy source that is beyond our current capability. And all of these guys in this documentary keep bringing up the concept that government interference is preventing us from obtaining free energy. So what the government should do is just give them money to research all of this and reverse engineer whatever stuff that the aliens have discovered so that we can have free energy. That's definitely, I think, the main point of the film, and I think Colavito is right to point that out. But like I had mentioned before, the early UFO community was seen as kind of like a threat to national security, both in the sense that other countries may have an interest in it that could be exploited for national security secrets, but also because like panics aren't something that we necessarily want to create. So information, the way it trickled out initially, the media was skeptical. But what you see post-2015, around the time of Trump, around the time of social media, viral panics, all of this stuff, is there's kind of a shift in how media companies handled UFOs. They had been sort of softening their stance in the late 90s and 2000s because of stuff like the X-Files clearly generated lots of public interest. So media needs to exploit subjects of interest to continue to make money. But really, like 2015 forward, you see a full embrace of the UFO subject, and media companies begin essentially like firing or shooting a fire hose at the public with these UFO stories. We're in like this post-truth reality where anything is really real if you say it is. It doesn't matter if it's later debunked because no one really pays attention to the retraction, the follow-up, any of that. It's whatever is happening right now. So one of the things that I think, at least with this story, is that it represents a shift in how information is transmitted to the public, both from the government in some sense, but I definitely think from private entities. One of the things that came up recently in the last day, someone within the UFO community, like one of the more prominent Twitter accounts, a guy named Tiny Klaus, he tweeted out, I believe it was yesterday, David Grush is a fucking fraud. I was the first person Gary Nolan called when he knew Grush's medical records were about to be leaked by Ken Klippenstein. This whole thing is a psyop to sow distrust in government and transfer tech to Silicon Valley. So one of the things that I think is happening here is that sometime around 2015, because of the success of Trump, because of the emergence of stuff like Russiagate and all of that, I think there are people specifically maybe within government, but definitely on the defense contractor side, people who want to take power. They recognize that the American people are, like Harris Marshall Chadwell said, predisposed to a belief in the fantastic. So you can exploit that in various ways. Sending like a stream of stories about UFOs out there and a government cover-up, not only does it engage with like this predisposition towards magical thinking that Americans have always had, but it also constantly chips away at trust in institutions like the government. So if you're someone like Peter Thiel, if you're a defense contractor who is looking for ways to grab power, attacking the government through any means that you have is very useful. So exploiting UFOs is a great way to essentially create your own pathway to power, because as people lose trust in the government, they're going to look to all of these other people who are attacking the government and look at like all of the biggest UFO influencers, like Jesse Michaels, the American Alchemy guy. He's a Thiel mentor. He's a Thiel mentee. David Grush and a lot of other people exist in this weird space where they're promoted by like Thiel connected personalities like Eric Weinstein. All of these people are connected to this private industrial complex, this defense contractor industrial complex, that these are people who are looking for ways to grab power. And one of the best ways to do that is to destroy existing institutions so you can create new ones, maybe even your own network state.
Well, they need to hire better filmmakers because this movie sucks. It's boring.
I mean, I don't think the quality of the movie is going to matter to anyone who is devoted to the subject, because to them it's just another piece of the disclosure cycle. So it's revealing information that we, for the most part, already knew. It's just reassembling it in a way that seems more convincing maybe to a lay audience. And the documentary here, it's boring, but it's not substantially worse, like from a production standpoint, than a lot of the stuff that gets released today on Netflix, PBS, any of those places.
No. It's up there with like it's quite highly produced. Even though documentaries, the reason why you see this proliferation of documentaries is because they're so cheap to make relative to like an actual like work of art. It is funny.
Even compared to older documentaries that used to come out, like you can find a lot of documentaries that were made in the 90s about UFOs. A lot of them look fucking fantastic. Even like stuff that was just produced for TV. It looks good because visually it was taking influence from stuff like the X-Files, which if you ever watch, visually is stunning. Like even just from a regular visual production standpoint. But like the stuff that comes out today is just mimicking other streaming bullshit. Like it's shot, reverse shot, if you even get that. A lot of times it's just a talking head over archival footage.
It's also $25, and I don't know how many people are going to want to spend that kind of money on this thing.
I mean, it's $25 now, but in 6 months it'll be free.
It'll be free, yeah.
Amazon Prime or something.
And I do wonder the timing of when it'll become free. And that's also something I wanted to talk to you about was the timing of these things. Because last time you were on and we were talking about the most recent round of disclosure stuff that was happening, which was the that grainy footage. It's always the grainiest footage of some UAP getting hit by one of our Tomahawk missiles or whatever it was. And just as that happened, like more Epstein stuff came out. Well, here we go. Another Epstein cycle of actual, like real maybe disclosure or not, because, you know, who knows, like what they so very selectively released this stuff. But there are like competing kinds of disclosure happening right now, I think. And why are they always kind of synchronized? I don't know if that's on purpose or what.
I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just part of the way news functions. You can't release everything at once, so you have to allow it to trickle out, or, as is the case with UFO stuff, fire a fire hose essentially at people's faces, because that's sort of the way it's been with UFOs since 2017, 2018, when the news cycle really kicked into gear. So it's just constantly getting new stuff out there, because you need to keep it in the public's eye for you to win over converts, for you to make your case convincingly. One of the things, like, most people don't read headlines, but they don't read articles, they'll read the headlines. So they'll pull out bits and pieces of that. And just through sheer repetition, you can get your point across.
It does seem like people care more about the Epstein stuff than UFOs. At least it appears that way. I mean,
absolutely. Yeah, as it should be.
Epstein buries these UFO moments that I think that whoever's orchestrating these releases must be pulling their fucking hair out, because they're just like, God damn it! Every time Epstein just eclipses this UFO, not panic, but conversation we'd like people to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think they all sort of function in a similar manner, in the sense that they undercut the institutions that are releasing them. So just through the sheer act of disclosure, the government continues to hurt its own reputation in the eyes of the public. And I think part of that's intentional on the part of, like, the people pushing for disclosure, because I don't think all of them have the best intentions in mind. That doesn't mean we shouldn't release the information. It just means you have to be careful with the context you place it in. Epstein is a tricky subject because he was bipartisan, like right down the middle. He worked with people like Leon Black, who were like huge Republican funders, but he was also a very close seeming friend of Bill Clinton, you know? So it's hard to say, like, how you handle the Epstein information, because essentially everyone just looks terrible. And one of the reasons that at least the Republicans initially were pushing for full disclosure before Trump was elected president is they thought they could continue manipulating it until, you know, everything that's come out over the past few months hasn't really exactly made Trump look good. No. And by virtue of, like, who is involved, it doesn't make the Republicans look good either, which is why they've sort of backed off. Mike Johnson, before the most recent piece of legislation about release of information, he's like, we can't release anything that hurts ongoing investigations or hurts victims. It's like, well, man, most of the victims are already out there saying they want this information public, you know?
Is there any, like, overlap with Epstein and aliens? I mean, was Epstein, you did point out, I think in a recent tweet, that Epstein was, like, researching the conspiracies about himself, and even, like, cited Peter Dale Scott.
Well, he didn't. So that was some kind of crazy person or person who just wasn't mentally well, who had sent that to two individuals. One of them, I guess, forwarded along to Epstein's lawyer, Reid Weingarten, who sent it to Epstein, probably because they were amused by that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. There's another email where Epstein and Weingarten are joking about Pizzagate, and Epstein either is quoting an article or himself asks, what does this have to do with Bill Clinton? You know? So I think that Epstein was probably aware of the conspiracy theories surrounding himself, at least on the tangential end of things, like people would send him stuff. I went through the email declassification, email release, it wasn't declassified, and searched for UFOs. There was one article that was referenced in, I guess he had signed up for some kind of like news aggregator service, which would send him 10 articles a week all formatted in the email proper, and it was a Vox article about UFOs being a new American religion. But I don't think Epstein himself had any direct interest in UFOs. He was connected to people who were. He obviously had very clear financial connections to Peter Thiel through Mithril Capital and other business relationships that they had, but he himself, to my knowledge, had no direct interest in UFOs.
How disappointing, you know?
I mean, he was too worried about creating like his own race of little Epsteins, right? You know, he was into all kinds of other weird shit.
What is interesting though is how my feeling about conspiracy theories is that if they're not true, then they're metaphorically true.
I mean, yeah. So I think like there are conspiracy theories that aren't entirely wrong. Like when people talk about, for example, like Operation Mockingbird, there was a Project Mockingbird where the CIA was bugging journalists to find out what was going on. I think it was in the early 60s related to the Vietnam War. We also know that the CIA had through various fronts like Forum World Features employed various journalists. So like in the sense that Operation Mockingbird may not have been an actually existing thing, like spiritually it's correct. Like what it's arguing, the CIA manipulated journalists, the CIA paid journalists. There were lots of journalists in the 60s who were on the CIA's payroll and either knew of it or didn't. Many of them, I'm trying to think of like one off the top of my head.
Gloria Allred is one of them, I remember. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So there was that one where she was with a student organization that was funded by the CIA. Coincidentally, at the same time, she used attacks on black movement leaders and framed them within the language of that wave of feminism. So it's like, yeah, probably something that happened there. Priscilla Johnson, who was a critic of the JFK, like conspiracy theorist, she worked for the CIA at various points in time. There were lots of journalists in that era who definitely worked for the CIA in overt or covert ways. So like spiritually, Operation Mockingbird is correct, even if there's never been anything to show that like there was an actual Operation Mockingbird.
And I think you see this. Maybe they've the same way that these Silicon Valley tech companies are taking over what were historically CIA intelligence military programs. I think you're seeing that again today, especially in light of the Epstein emails, and they keep trying to dismiss this as some sort of moral panic. You know, it's just it's
so
very
a
similar.
lot of people on like the contrarian end of things, either people who are directly connected to Thiel, who a lot of the people like the Red Scare crowd were trying to rehabilitate Epstein like a year and a half ago, saying he didn't actually do anything. You see that recurring today in journalists like, well, journalists in quotes, like Michael Tracy and Matt Taibbi, who've been on a recent tear attacking Epstein victims and saying he was never actually convicted of sex trafficking, which is like, yeah, that's technically correct. He was only ever convicted of solicitation because he got a sweetheart deal due to the fact that he was able to negotiate out of the actual prostitution and trafficking charges. The initial, like, I believe it was in Palm Beach, 14-year-old is the one who initially set off the first round of investigations because she reported that Epstein had solicited her as part of whatever he was doing. There were other things that were found that he just didn't get convicted of. When he was rearrested in 2018 or 2019, it was on trafficking charges. And then obviously we know how that ended before anything could actually go to trial. But Ghislaine Maxwell was convicted of trafficking. Even if Michael Tracy doesn't seem to agree with the way that trial played out, she was convicted of trafficking. She is a trafficker. We know from the emails that have been released through the recent batch and others that have been put out, I believe Yahoo or Business Insider. One of them did a big series of articles, a big article about it. In one of the emails from, I think it was 2008, Maxwell is emailing with Epstein and they're discussing what type of charge he should agree to with the government. Should he accept just solicitation or should he accept trafficking of a minor? It's like all of these people were involved. They knew what was happening. He was a sex trafficker and he did other things on the side. You know, it's like, this is all real. It's just that, unfortunately, because of the way media works and specifically the way this contrarian crowd, the goals that they obviously have in mind, they can negotiate around what he actually did and present him as someone, or even Maxwell as someone who was unfairly targeted. Or if not unfairly targeted, things have been exaggerated.
It was interesting watching them practice these exact talking points like a year ago. Bronze Age pervert in particular, trying to make this whole like ephemophilic, barely legal argument, and it's just
not pedophilia, man. It's a hepophilia.
Yeah, no, it's always smart to be pedantic about sex crimes. You know?
Yeah, and I mean the thing is, it's like I get why they're doing it. I get the point of it. It's just that what we know from like actual journalists, people like Julie Brown, who have been working on this for over a decade, we know there are other victims. We know that there were settlements that never made it to trial. We know lots of stuff that happened. We have this information. It's not some kind of media hysteria. One of the things I find fascinating is Maxwell has tried to exploit this, and I don't know if there's some kind of concerted effort connecting the two sides, but when she went to trial, she hired a very notorious psychologist, Elizabeth Loftus, who argued that Epstein's victims were suffering from post-event suggestion because memory is a slippery thing, which is correct, but that these victims were not, trafficked as children. It's the media's portrayal that influenced them and made them come forward. So it's like this very insidious argument that keeps persisting, and I'm very, very annoyed by it.
How do you fucking sleep at night if that's your job?
I don't have dark circles under my eyes, right?
No, I'm talking about the fucking people who are making money off of this. Is ridiculous.
I'm sure they sleep
immoral. Well. It's highly medicated, I'm sure. I mean, that's how they sleep.
No, I think many of them, like, they're able to compartmentalize, or they don't think about it.
And aliens want to give these people technology to
the deep state, man. The pedo cabal is working with the aliens.
Oh man, that would be a real bummer. People who believe that Peter Thiel has this tech already and can be trusted with it, it's just like, oh boy, I hope you're wrong.
Yeah, and he's just like one version of that because his name is the one that's most prominent. I'm sure there are other people out there who are just as bad as him that we don't hear about.
No, of course.
But like, it's this idea that someone is out there who is coming to save us, like someone like that, because they're going to force disclosure. And the thing is, like, you can't force disclosure. Like, we've been trying to get disclosure on the JFK assassination since the 1960s. We've been trying to get disclosure probably on other subjects going back even further. If you believe the Trump administration, they're going to disclose all of the information about Amelia Earhart.
Oh, right.
Yeah, they released some of those files. Nothing of prominence was in there. Nothing that we didn't already know.
Yeah, and that's kind of how this whole film felt too. Is just like there's nothing new in the age of disclosure. It's
not really
nothing exciting. The other thing I saw you've been tweeting about recently was real life body snatching.
Yeah, so that's partially connected to something I'm working on, which actually does touch on the government, but yeah, I can't really go into that in particular other than the stuff I posted publicly. It's weird that organ trafficking is a thing that probably happens in the United States. Mm-hmm. It's something that definitely did in the 19th century because of just the need of medical science at that time for specimens, things that they could either work on or make attempts to transfer into living creatures. But just seeing like the recent stories that have been popping up in the news over the past year or two, it's kind of like what we think of with aliens, like stealing people, implanting stuff into their bodies, taking stuff out. It's this weird sort of thing that actually does happen, but not in the way that it often pops up in the popular press. I think the story I tweeted out was about a New Jersey organization, a nonprofit, that was essentially forcing its medical partners into trying to take organs possibly before people have died, when they were like near the brink of death but hadn't completely died, initiating the procedure to extract those organs.
So fucked up, dude.
Yeah, like there are these weird things
shit
that are happening in society, like functionally, which we would consider conspiracies. It's just that they're not sexy. It's not like a sex trafficking ring or UFOs.
No,
it's just a nonprofit literally exploiting like probably the poor and indigent.
That's just the entrepreneurial spirit, man. You can't,
But yeah, I mean, that goes back to like the earliest days, like body snatching in the 19th century was just medical colleges essentially stealing organs from like the poor, from African Americans, from anyone who they could get it from that no one would really care about. And that's sort of what it seems like is happening today again.
And why would aliens want anything to do with us? I mean, when you look, if that's one of the other like zoomed out ideas where it's just like, well, you can't understand alien logic, I suppose. You know, it's beyond our human understanding, most likely, right? But I always wonder what they see in us, if they're interested in us, as it's just like, because we're just the most fucked up reality TV possible. Are they entertained by our behavior? Like, what's your personal theory about aliens' interest in us?
There's a great episode from the recent reboot of The X-Files, The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat. It's about the Mandela effect. And it ends with the character who's presented as possibly being not all there together mentally. He states that they ultimately did find the truth, and the truth, when Mulder found out, drove him crazy, because it was that aliens have been in contact with us. They just don't like us and don't want to talk to us. So I could see that actually being something that probably is true.
God, well, I don't know.
I want to believe, to steal that X-Files phrase, I want to believe that there's something out there. I keep my mind open as best I can. It's just that I keep getting pushed towards skepticism because of documentaries like The Age of Disclosure, which doesn't disclose anything and essentially says, hey, bro, trust me.
Well, I continue to trust you. Thank you again for being on the show. I know I'm not supposed to trust people, but
Trust no one.
I'm too gullible, man. Like I don't know. It's hard for me.
I think we all are.
It's hard
I think that's fundamentally a human. That's like a part of human nature, right? We all want to believe.
Yeah, I want to believe. I want to trust people. So I'll throw a grain of salt your way. Maybe, who knows? I mean, you are ex-military, right? And I live in Sarasota. I could be fed too.
Barely.
How can you trust me? Barely.
Yeah, I didn't really. I was in for 4 years so I could go to college.
Well, Robert, again, thank you for joining me. We'll talk again very soon.
Yeah, thanks.
I never tell you a lie. I never let you down. I never leave. I'd be the one who'd always be around. Baby, give me a chance. I'd pull the sun out from the sky to light your darkest night.